In our previous studies, we came to this place where the angels had come before God. Satan was one of them. And God asked Satan what he'd been doing. He says, I've been wandering around. God says, have you noticed my servant Job? And what a great upright man he is. And then Satan, true to form, accuses, says, well, sure he is, because you take care of him. You do everything for him, but just take things away. And you'll see that he changes. And that's where we are tonight with we'll start with verse 13. If you want to follow along in your Bible, you really could. If you're at home, you need a Bible. If you're here, you need a Bible. We're going to be into it a lot more than we have been. Verse 13 starts, 12, Then Satan went out from the presence of the Lord. One day when Job's sons and daughters were feasting and drinking wine at the oldest brother's house, a messenger came to Job and said, the oxen were plowing and the donkeys were grazing nearby, and the Sabaeans attacked and carried them off. They put the servants to the sword, and I am the only one who has escaped to tell you. While he was still speaking, another messenger came up and said, the fire of God fell from the sky and burned up the sheep and the servants, and I am the only one who has escaped to tell you. While he was still speaking, another messenger came and said, the Chaldeans formed 3 raiding parties and swept down on your camels and carried them off. They put the servants to the sword, and I am the only one who has escaped to tell you. While he was still speaking, yet another messenger came and said, your sons and daughters were feasting and drinking wine at the oldest brother's house, when suddenly a mighty wind swept in from the desert, struck the 4 corners of the house, that collapsed on them, and they are dead, and I am the only one who has escaped to tell you. At this, Job got up and tore his robe and shaved his head. Then he fell to the ground and worshipped and said, naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I will depart. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. May the name of the Lord be praised. In all this, Job did not sin by charging God with wrongdoing. And so we want to dissect this. That story is straightforward. There's not really a lot to talk about in that regard with the story. It's clear. But we want to talk about things. I want to get your impression of things that we can infer from just how we know people are, how we ask. And that's where we're going to talk about. God grants Satan permission. That's where he started. What did God allow Satan to do is the first question. What was it he said you could do? Satan said, remove your hand.
You can do anything to him but not hurt him.
That's right. Touch everything he owns, but do not touch the man himself, is what he said. And that's the next question. It says, how does God limit Satan? He said you can touch all his property, but you can't touch him. And of course that speaks to us some about, the relationship between Satan and God. He had to abide by the rules. He probably didn't want to. He know he doesn't want to, because he tells us later he wanted to do some other stuff. So what is it Satan did? It says one day. We have no idea how long Satan waited. Could have been the next day. Could have been taking his time. We don't know. But what things we just read in there did Satan bring against Job there? You got those written down? Looked at them? The first one was the Sabaeans came and attacked, killed all the people, and took all the goods that they came across. It says that, the oxen, that's right. The oxen and the donkeys were grazing. The Sabaeans attacked, carried them off. They put the servants to the sword, so they killed all the help, but they took the livestock. And the next one, what does it say? A fire from God fell down from the sky, burned up the sheep and the servants. The third one, the Chaldeans formed raid parties and came against them and took the camels and killed everybody else. And then finally, a great storm came in, and the house collapsed and killed all of his children who were feasting in there. And you talk about a bad day, that was a bad day. Again, we really don't know that each one happened within that same day, but probably so. That's the way it makes it sound. But so that is enough to pretty well put anybody in the grave, isn't it? If that all happened to us, everything we own is wiped out. All of our children are wiped out. We'd be wiped out too, emotionally, physically.
Especially the children.
I'm sorry?
Especially the children.
Yeah. When you lose all those. Question I've got is, think about what was done to all that Job possesses. When you think about what Satan did, what does that tell us about an angel's powers? Okay? When we think about that, apparently he was able to incite the Sabaeans to attack and do that. He was able to somehow cause fire to rain down from the sky. He caused the Chaldeans, and I don't have any trouble understanding that he could incite these armies to come do battle. It's interesting about the fire from the sky. Wonder what kind of that was exactly, or power. And then the fourth one, with the great wind swept in and knocked the house down. You know, it ascribes all of that to Satan. He's an angel. We'll revert him back to an angel. And so that, to me, tells me something about an angel's power. That an angel can influence people to action. That an angel can cause supernatural weather occurrences to happen. That's what I would get from that an angel could do, and Satan, being an angel, had that power. If we go on, get your response. How would you interpret Job's response there? We have the words that he said. What does it say? The first thing, verse 20. He got up, tore his robe, and shaved his head. What's all that about?
It's grief.
His grief, and that's the way they expressed grief in that day. They would tear their robe, and he shaved his head. Those were just the way that they would express grief. I'm sure there was other parts of it. I don't know if he cried out loud. We all know men don't cry, but maybe he did. I would have, but he did those things. Then what's the next thing it says he did? He did.
Well, he fell down.
Fell down
Shaved his head.
in worship, it says.
Worship.
He got down worshiping God, and he did this. And his saying, naked I came from a mother's womb, naked I will depart. The Lord gives, the Lord is taken away. What is he acknowledging there?
God is supreme.
Supreme, that's right. God is supreme.
God
Everything,
gave everything to him, and he does us, and he can take away.
everything he has came out of the goodness of God, yeah. And he is totally acknowledging that he has been a benefactor of God's blessings, that he came into this world with nothing, he's going to leave this world with nothing, and that he's saying that's the Lord's right, isn't it? The Lord gives, the Lord takes away. And he ends up, may the name of the Lord be praised. So it really shows what kind of heart, that he really had a servant's heart, a submissive heart towards God, to where he acknowledged God was the supreme creator, was the supreme one to worship, and whatever God wanted to do was what he could do with Job, and Job acknowledged that. Okay, so that's, and then we talked about what he said, that naked I came out of my mother's womb. We talked about that. Then if you summarize, I kind of said it, could you think of some different words to summarize Job's attitude about that? How would you describe the way he responded?
Amazing.
Amazing, okay, yeah. Yeah, amazing. Is it what you'd expect a person, how you'd expect them to react to all that? I mean, you know, we'll teach each other. We'll say something about keep praising the Lord in all kinds of trouble. That's a world of trouble. And would we have blamed Job for being a little bitter or upset, just humanly? I don't think we would we? I think we'd understand.
Yeah, understand.
We would understand, yeah. So then, and I gotta get ready. I wasn't quite ready. Never have enough time. This is where we're talking about, and it's that sheet you've got as well. And so we go on. We're on this next slide here. We talked about what Job said. This is the verse we quoted. Naked I came, and naked I will go back. And then talk about Job's attitude. And finally, what does the Bible say about Job's response? Right there at the very end. Verse 22. In all this, Job did not sin by charging God with wrongdoing. So he didn't act in bitterness towards God. He didn't blame God. He said, in so many words, God is sovereign. He's given it all to me. He can take it away. It's all His. And that really is an attitude of a steward. And that's what we really are. We are stewards of God. He has given us what He's given us. It is all from Him, and He has entrusted us to use what He has given us to His glory and honor. We get to use some of it to take care of ourselves as well, but we are stewards of what God has given us. Would you think most people would act the way Job did? You're nodding, you're shaking your head. No. People aren't going to respond that way, are they? How would we think they would respond? We've kind of answered that. These are not hard answers. You know the answers to them.
Well, it would be, woe is me.
Well, that's why
Woe
God
is me, yeah.
used him. He knew his strength.
We have people respond today, don't we? Things go wrong. And what's the first response they get? God, why did you do this to me? Isn't that kind of where it comes most of the time? Why am I going through this? I don't deserve this. We effectively do blame God, and that is a natural reaction. And what is amazing to me, the way people are. On one hand, people, when things are going good or whatever, they will not acknowledge that God is supreme creator over everything, that He is the one they're responsible to, accountable to, that they should be obeying, that whatever He says goes. That's not in their life. But let something go wrong, and what happens? Now God's responsible for everything. You see what I'm saying? On one hand, people will say, oh, it's just nature taking its course. That's just coincidence. That doesn't happen. But let something go wrong in their life, says, why would God do that to me? And so it's kind of a two faces there of how we react to God so often. And it is normal. Oh boy, I tell you, the devil's hitting in the way here now. Okay. This episode is very similar to chapter 1, verses 6 through 8. Can you look back to that, verses 6 through 8, and glance and see if you can pick out what's different between the first time God says, have you noticed my servant Job, and this time after the trials, what God says in chapter 2. There's one added phrase He talks about.
Is
that what you're talking
Well,
about? there,
verse 3, he says the same thing. There's no one else like him. He's blameless and upright, a man who fears God and shuns evil. But he says one more thing, and he still maintains his integrity, even though you incited me, God's talking to Satan, against him to ruin him without any reason. So he adds that on, that he said, okay, Satan, I'll let you touch what he had. You did. You took it all away. But Job still maintains his integrity, his faith in God. He hadn't changed his story. He still trusts God. He still believes. So he adds that on to that he maintained his integrity. He's true. He hadn't shifted just because things went wrong. And so that's God's attitude towards Job, that he's still an upright, faithful person. Now, one of the things I wanted to tickle your mind with here and play with you a little bit, notice in verse 2 and 3 there, God says, though you incited me against him to ruin him without any reason. You see the difference I'm talking about here? See what's happening? We have, in the first part, God says, Satan, you can do whatever you want to him. And then we read these 4 things that happened to Job, okay? And we see that by Satan's hands. But now we get over to this passage, and God himself says, even though you incited me against him. You follow where I'm getting at? How do we balance that out? We have, and we acknowledge in chapter 1, and Satan did all these things, and here it's talking about incited me to do that. God's saying you incited me against him. So what do you think is happening there? How are both of those true?
God allowed it to happen.
God allowed it to happen. That could be inciting God against him. He didn't necessarily do the acts, but he did give permission for those things to happen. That'd be a reasonable answer. Anything else come to mind? See, this is really getting in there and reading, everything, not just passing it through. But you got to remember what we just read and what we're reading now. We have where Satan's given permission to do these things. We read where they're done, but then we have here that God's talking about deciding. So, yes, I think God is, that's what he means is, Satan incited God to do that. Now,
He's still reassuring Satan that he thinks Job is still that fine person
yeah,
here on the earth.
he still supports Job, and he's kind of saying Job is still honoring me, even though God is the one that allowed it. Okay. And that this whole passage tells us something, this whole book is telling us things, that sometimes trouble is allowed to come into our life for a purpose. Okay? Most of us try to get better or do better when we come up against hard. As long as everything's going well, we don't have to work, we don't have to try, we don't have to struggle. But we have over and over in Scripture that faith brings about patience, which brings about perseverance, which brings about godly character. We need to go through those struggles to grow. And we know that with our children. Our children need some struggles. If we did absolutely everything for them, would they learn? You grew up like I know. The kids don't have it now, but all of us grew up. Mom, what does this mean? Or what is this? Go look it up. Get your dictionary. Get your encyclopedia, right? They might give us some answers, but more and more they tell us, go look it up and read it. Now they say, go Google it, is what they do. But we do that. There are things we could help them do, whether it's physical, whether it's studying, but we insist on them doing the work because we know they need that exercise to learn how to do it, to get stronger. If we give them everything, we tell them everything, they're not going to grow. God knows that's as well with us too. And so sometimes these hardships come into our life to help us to grow in character more like Christ. By resisting something, then that deepens our faith. Other times God says that it's to no one's fault that something happened, but that God be glorified when the person was healed. And here in this book of Job, as we get into the friends, they're going to say, you must have done something wrong, and Job's going to have to insist on his innocence, that he didn't do anything wrong. And so that happens sometimes. So God does do that. Can God do that? Is God allowed to do that? He's God. Okay, we don't like that answer, but He's God. But what does the Bible tell us? All things work together for good for them that love God and are called according to His purpose. And God will turn things into good as we trust Him. He will reward us. But we need to go through these valleys. I remember a podcast I heard from Dr. Focus on the Family, Dobson, was talking about how they lived out in Colorado. That's where Focus on the Family is. And I've been up on Pikes Peak, and you get up that high, there ain't nothing up there. There's no trees, there's no foliage, but boy, is it beautiful looking out everywhere. But if you want the beauty of nature, you got to go down in the valley. That's where the rich soil is. That's where the water is. It's not up on the mountaintop, even though it's beautiful. And he was making the point that in life we'd like to live on the mountaintop, but it's really the valleys of our life that mature us, that grow us, that striving, that struggle to become who we're supposed to be. And so that's part of what's happening here. Next question I have here is, does that phrase cause you to change who is responsible in actions against Job? So just that one I pointed out, does that make you think it's God's fault that this happened? Well, we've explained that. It is as a result of what God allowed, but God didn't do it to him. Satan still did that to him. Is Satan satisfied with that? Is he satisfied that with Job, he attacked everything, he took everything he had? Job still stayed solid and true, kept his integrity. But Satan said, okay, you win, God. Is that what he did?
Satan never gives up.
No, he didn't. What did he do? He come back with another accusation, didn't he? He came back saying, well, wait a minute. Sure, skin for skin, Satan says. A man will give all he has for his own life. You stretch out your hand and strike his flesh and bones, and he'll surely. So he continues building his accusation against Job. So no, he doesn't give up. He keeps pushing. He keeps wanting more and more. So that's his response. What did God say this time? Okay, you can touch his body, but don't take his life. Okay, that's the next step. So God says, you can do that. Gives Satan that permission to do that. What does Satan do then? He covers him with boils. And, the worst thing, closest thing I can think of I've experienced, and poor Melody is doing it now, is shingles, where those sores come up and you can't get away from it. I mean, they itch, they ache, and you imagine that all over your body. And Job had that happen, and what does it say he did? It said he took broken pottery, was scraping his sores as he sat among the ashes. That sitting among the ashes is another response of grief. They would sit there among the ashes. So that, that's what Satan did to Job. He then afflicted him with these boils. Okay, we're at the same place again. What was Job's response to that? Did he curse God? How did he respond to that?
He remained God
Yeah.
held his integrity, kept his integrity.
He kept it, didn't he? Yep. He just kept going, kept trusting, kept believing in God. It helps us with this new character who shows up now with all this trouble.
His wife,
His wife, right. Yeah, his wife shows up. And she comes into the story. What does she tell him to do?
Just
You know,
and
curse
die.
God and die.
Die.
Yeah,
But
curse
you know,
God
she
and
is
die.
bad, right? I mean, she lost all her kids.
showed a lot of sympathy.
She didn't get much sympathy, I know.
Does Job accept that from her?
No.
No, he says, what are you talking about? He, matter of fact, calls her foolish.
Yeah.
And in the Hebrew, that foolish there really means a morally deficient person.
Mine says a heathen woman.
A Hebrew woman is,
A heathen,
oh, yeah, okay, yeah.
foolish.
But it's
So let's try to infer some here. Let's try to put ourselves, and ladies, you can put yourself, men we could with our, if it was our spouse. What do you think her motivation was for saying curse God and die? I mean, what could you imagine?
she saw everything that had happened to him
Okay.
and to the family. That she just thinks, how can you not be totally upset by this?
And now he's covered with boils. Yeah, that's part of it. We need to realize she's lost too, right? Yeah, and she may blame him. That could be part of it. What she's thinking. Are there some other motivations you might could see?
What did you do to get this?
According to what?
What did you do?
Well, what did you do? That's another one. Yeah, I'm thinking of one more. I'm thinking of some other way she might have been feeling.
I think she was upset at God and couldn't understand why he couldn't be upset also.
Okay. Yeah. Why didn't he feel like she did? Yeah. Okay, I can see that. What do you think the relationship was like before all this happened? We don't have much to tell us, but they had 10 children,
Yeah, I was just gonna say.
so they've been busy. He was extremely and very powerful, and we all know that behind every good man's a good woman, right? So we know that she probably had something in there. So she lost a lot too, and I just wonder if there's another motivation there that y'all hadn't touched on yet. Can you study and dig it out? Have you ever had a loved one withering away and you thought it'd be merciful just to go on and die? Have you ever thought that?
Yeah.
I wonder if part of this is acting out of love towards him, seeing the pain he's in. Everything's gone. Now his body is riddled with these sores. What is there to live for? He's in pain. He's in agony. He's got nothing. He'd be basically destitute if he was healthy. So maybe part of that motivation, as awful as it sounds, she knew if he cursed God, God would take him, or she believed that. But maybe it was coming from a love for him that he was hurting so bad that she was encouraging him basically to go ahead and do what would cause him to die. Part of that could be, and it's understandable, you know, we don't have here yet really anything Job looking forward. I think we have the disadvantage in some ways of knowing the whole story, and we would assume Job had some kind of hope that God was going to make it right. He was trusting God. He didn't know what God would do. I think we can firmly say that. He was trusting God. It might have been harder for her to believe something good's going to come. And, you know, and again, human-wise, we have that within ourselves. We can feel like things are going to change, but a loved one watching what's going on with us, it's a different thing for them to have that same hope. Because, you know, hope is something within us that stirs within us. And in a way, people can observe my actions of hope, but they can't feel my hope, okay? You follow what I'm saying? So she may have struggled with having trust that it's going to work out, that he needed to stay true. She's seeing everything's over. Just go ahead and die. You got nothing, now your body's there. So I would just wonder, and again, I shared with you before, as we do this kind of thing, we can't take it as scripture, but we can use it to help us, because these are humans, these are people like we are. And they, in a lot of ways, people hadn't changed in all these years. And so perhaps part of this was coming from a love for him, just want to see him out of pain.
And perhaps she did not have the same strong faith in God
Right.
that Job.
Exactly. She may not have been there quite yet. We don't know.
We don't know.
They,
God said there was no one else on earth like Job, though.
that's yeah. So by that we can assume she wasn't that far.
That's right.
Job was the most faithful. So yeah, and that's not an indictment against her. It's not a criticism. We are where we are. Job's the one who'd been dealing one-on-one with God, and she was getting some of the benefits, and I think she was a loving wife, good woman. She'd stuck with them, and really kind of still sticking with them through this. But she would have had these emotions, these struggles, certainly, going through them, because she faced them too. Maybe she did blame him. All of this we're inferring, we don't know. But we could see all of these emotions could have taken place within her. Eight glasses. Okay, yeah, we talked about that. We talked about he didn't take his wife's suggestion, and he didn't take her recommendations. So let's go on. I talked about what his wife's motivation was. We don't know. That could have been part of it. Too far. Okay. Thinking of Job's life before the trials thus far, how would you characterize the relationship? I asked you about that. I perceive it was a good one. We've talked about how she was probably feeling, and maybe even more intensely, just the way women in nurturing connect to people. Men can be more businesslike. It's not an absolute. It's not always, but she had birthed all these kids. That's a different relationship right there. And so we can know she had to be hurting really badly. And in a way, she's more innocent than Job was. Job's involved in this thing between him, Satan, and God. She's a third party out here, okay? Not even in the mix, but it's impacting her. And that tells us something we know about life and about what's working, is there are people in our sphere who are impacted by things happening to us. And the setbacks, sickness, it does impact others. They have to deal with it as well. And we're well aware of that, the impact on the caregivers. So we can imagine the emotions she would have had as a wife, one who loved him. How does Job characterize the suggestion? As foolishness, and certainly it is foolish to curse God. That old Jim Croce song, you don't spit into the wind. You just don't. There's some things you're just not stupid. You don't grab a rabid dog by the leg and expect to get away unhurt. So he said that's just foolishness. He is the supreme, almighty God. He's given us all these good things. And he says that, shall we accept good from God and not trouble? This is really showing us his heart, isn't it? He was that sold out to God that he didn't question really this hard time coming his way. And the chapter of that verse ends up, in all this, Job did not sin in what he said once again.